Hello everybody, Keith here again. This is the final video for the 2021-22 development orchids, the ones we've been following for a year now. Some have done better than others, which was pretty much inevitable, I suppose. And we'll see just where we go, and up to a point where I think I've gone wrong perhaps, but let's start with the first one. Right, let's try and get as close to this as we can. And I don't think we're going to do ever so well. So really the best you can do is look at the stills of where we've been with this so far. To my mind, there's no doubt that putting it on this piece of cork bark has saved it. We were down to a very little piece, and it's put roots out, it's put in a flower spike up, which even for an Oncidium is taking an inordinate amount of time to actually do any good, but it's there. And down here at the front, by my finger, we've got a new fan and new roots from that as well. So this is an ongoing success, I'm glad to say. It's by far the smallest orchid I've got, both physically and the actual amount of it. It seems to have picked up in the last few days. When we've had some more daylight, we had an extremely dull December. And the last few days in early January, we've had some very bright ones, and it does seem to have perked up a little bit with that. But that's one of the unfortunate things with my setup. I don't have any artificial lights. I really don't have anything out. I can set them up sensibly, so they have to put up with what they get. But this, as I say, on the whole, I think has done quite well. I'm seriously thinking about carrying this over to next year, because I think that this is going to be worth following for another 12 months and just seeing where we go. Will it survive? Will it develop into something a lot bigger? Or after all this, will I lose it? Who knows? So this is Talumnia hawksiana. Right, Phalaenopsis equestris. Well, we started off with one plant and I've ended up with two. I suppose you could almost say 2.5. So the mother plant, doing quite nicely. We've got lots of roots, we've had new leaves, and it looks perfectly happy. It's flowered twice now, and both times we put a keiki out. Now this keiki, as you can see, is showing absolutely no signs of putting a root out. There's a bit of a bulge at the base of the leaf that's pointing downwards. I don't know how well that's going to come out on camera, but I reckon that's probably where it is. But if it's going to put one out, well, I can't take it off until it's got some roots. But it's put another leaf up, and we can only see. the original keiki from the first flower spike. That seems quite happy. We've got roots down to the bottom of this small pot. Doing very nicely. Shouldn't be terribly long before it's flowering, I guess. And who knows, I don't know whether to keep it or try and pass it on to somebody else, because obviously we've got another one here. But that's Phalaenopsis equestris, and I think that's a definite success story. Here's one I'm going to have to start out here so you can see what it is. This is Cycopsies mariposa, and this is a mixed bag. Up until about a month ago I was quite happy with it. It had been doing very well, and it still is growing vegetatively quite happily. We've had, I'm not sure if it's 3 or 4 new growths this year. Most have completed. This one I nearly lost. I pointed it out before that for an orchid that actually likes moisture, it does not like to have any part of the plant itself wet for any length of time, and that came up under the media and it wasn't looking very happy, so I scraped the media away, and as it's done with another one before, it saved itself. Now around the back, where my finger is just there, that little new growth started a week or so ago. Now then, the bit that bothers me about this plant is the top of the spike. We had a green tip on there up until a couple of weeks ago, and I think again it's this horrible December we've had, whether it just wasn't warm enough, there wasn't enough light for it, or what, I don't know. But unfortunately the green growing tips disappeared, and I don't know how these things regenerate, whether it will try and do something else, whether it will branch, or whether this spike will die back, which will be a worry because it's never shown any signs of putting another spike up. But of course, if it loses one, it might give it a go to produce another one. But unfortunately this one, this spike, I don't think is going to go from the top of that spike again, but we'll see. I think What's Up Orchids snapped a spike off and it regenerated or branched or something, so there is hope. Perhaps she'll comment below and give me a bit of positive information. As I say, it's growing fine. They are odd, our Cycopsies. I can see why people have so much trouble with them. If you get the base of a new growth or even a pseudobulb in the media and staying damp, they will rot almost overnight. They take no going down at all. But it needs to be wet around the roots. So I'd love to know quite how these things grow in the wild. But nevertheless, this one's doing okay. I'm having to be extremely cautious about how much water I'm giving it to try and get it so that this dries out you know, in no longer than a fortnight, 2 weeks. It doesn't seem to bother it too much if it's wet for longer, but the last time I got it wet, when I left it in this conservatory over the winter, and it really wasn't getting warm enough to dry it out at all, as opposed to being on a windowsill near a central heating radiator. It sulked and really didn't do anything at all. So one of the things you've got to do with a Cycopsies, I find, is that the rate of drying is a critical or a reasonably crucial factor. And if you can twiddle with the amount of moisture you give it so that it dries, preferably in about a week, but otherwise up to 10 days, at worst 2 weeks, it'll keep going. But if anybody's got any bright ideas as to how you actually trigger a spike as opposed to new growths, I'd love to hear about it. But again, it's mixed blessing, but I'm not losing it. Okay, now the 3 Cymbidium naviganii jesters which I got through the East Midlands Orchid Society as well-grown seedlings, and I did the 3 in different setups. I did 2 in a fairly standard 4-inch pot. One was in bark, and this one is in the Westland small bark and Ceramis mix, and it's done quite well. We've got a nice sized growth that's moving well and a second growth there. So all in all, we've got 4 bulbs on that one. This is the same size pot. The plants were virtually identical when I got them, and this one's also got 4 bulbs on, but actually it's not as well on. We've got a fairly modest new growth there, but it's growing, and we've got a brand new growth that hasn't started very long just there. So that's one interesting development. The one that's done least well is the one that's in the biggest pot. We've got roots down to the bottom, I see, but I don't think it's able to dry the media out, even for a moisture-loving plant like these are. I think this is too wet, so it's going to need to be done. But, and it's a big but, this one, I think none of my Cymbidiums and none of my Peonies did very well this year. And I think I know why. I find it very difficult because they're outside and it rains, of course, from time to time during an English summer. So it's difficult to have a routine for watering these things. If they're drowned already, you don't want to be pouring stuff through the pot. So as an experiment, when I put them out last year, I put in some pelleted fertiliser in the hope that this would dissolve slowly and provide nutrients. So it's just rainwater and that, and it should do well. And in fact, they didn't. None of the Peonies did extremely badly, and I lost quite a few. Not that a lot in the first place, but I lost probably a good third of them. Just never did any good at all. And these are not died, and nor have any of the others, but they're not flowered. None of them are flowered this year. And I don't think they've grown particularly well. So what I'm going to have to do is fetch all of them out of the pot. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, there's 8 Cymbidiums. They're going to have to be got out of the pots and repotted without this fertiliser in there. Get rid of that, and I will next year when they go outside, they're going to have a routine for watering them as if they were inside. They're going to have to be watered and fertilised with an orchid specific fertiliser, and that we'll see how that one goes. Anyway, that's the 3 Cymbidium naviganii jesters. Bulbophyllum fascinator. It's not doing a fat lot at the moment. We've had some new growths earlier in the year, but it just seems to have stalled. It must need more light or more heat or something than it's getting at the moment. Unlike my Memoria, I can't remember what it is. There's a milder Bulbophyllum, Memoria mcdonald. That's got thin leaves like a Cymbidium or a Phalaenopsis. This has got very thick leaves, very, very thick leaves. So it's a different group from whatever those others are. The bulbs are all plump and looking perfectly healthy. They just aren't putting any new growths out. So all we can do is see where this one goes. It's done okay in the last year. It hasn't pulled any trees up. What I'm going to have to do is have another look at what's best for it, because I'm not convinced I've got this right, quite right yet. Bulbophyllum fascinator. Okay, Mazda Patricia Hill. On the whole, I'm very, very pleased with this. It's grown well. Lots of new growths, looking really good. Seems to grow very well in my conditions. So down here in the conservatory, where it's sort of 16 to 21, 22 at the moment, depending on the amount of sunshine we get, and I then take it upstairs where it perhaps gets to 25 or so on a back bedroom windowsill when it gets much too warm in here, when the temperature's going up to 30 odd degrees. Now then, I've just noticed something as I've come to pick this up today, and it's several leaves that have been sheared off, and I don't know how well you're going to see this in the centre of that leaf there, where my thumb is. Can we see that? There's some webby like stuff, so what that might be or might not be, I don't know. There's 5 leaves have been attacked by whatever it is. I've no idea. 2 leaves have been sort of folded together to form a protection for this egg case or whatever it is, but I think what that means is this is going to have to come out of the pot very quickly and check through for, and it certainly ain't a slug, not with that, but whatever it is, that's got to come out and be fixed. very quickly. But overall this has done very well, it's flowered well, it's grown well, and apart from that, another definite positive result. These are the three Restrictors we started with, the three species, Cyprea, Sanguinea and Brachypus. And two have done okay and one has not, so we'll have a look at those. We'll start with the one that has done least well. This is Brachypus. It was doing okay, and then it decided to dump all its roots and just started to die back very quickly. So I yanked it out of the pot, and the only thing I could rescue was this cakey, which had a few roots forming on it. I put it in the pot, kept my fingers crossed. It's not done anything yet, but we can only wait and see. What I have done is I've replaced it with a new plant from Burnham's, where I got this one from, which is doing okay, literally next door to this one. And I've also got two more, Falkenbergii and elegans. They are bigger plants than these three, and they're already causing me problems. I've got them in slightly taller jars for terraria, but the Falkenbergii is already putting leaves up that are too tall, so I'm going to have to think of that. So I might well swap these Restrictors that we've been looking at with some different ones. This is Sanguinea. It's flowered several times, it's put new growths up. So I'm reasonably happy with this. It's doing okay, the roots are moving through this compost, which is based on Mixed Masdevallia's recipe. And it seems to be okay, so we can only wait and see where we go from here. It's staying rather wet. Now I know these like to be damp. Not sure, like a lot of these things, they like to be absolutely sodden, so we'll have to be a lot more careful that these are drying out, even if they are in a terrarium type environment. This one's Cyprea. I haven't repotted this one, as you can see from this fern. It's the only one of the three I haven't repotted yet. It's only just dropped a flower, so you have to think this is doing okay. We've had some new growth, but I think this fern's doing a bit too well, and really needs coming out. So I'll have this out in the near future and repot it. But we've got two decent plants and one that isn't. Right, we'll get on to the last lap now. This is Dendrobium Jenkins Eye. It's done quite nicely after I moved it to this piece of cork bark. Put up a couple of new growths afterwards. It was doing okay before, but it was getting a little bit too big for how I had it, so it seems to be reasonably comfortable now. We've got some new roots, we've got several new growths. Whether it'll flower this year, don't know. But, you know, like you can see with this one, which is one of the new growths, if you look at that, oh, can't get it quite in focus, there we are. You can probably see this is a nice fat bulb, so there's no sign of this sort of drying up or anything like that. All the pseudo bulbs look good, so there's lots of energy in there to give it a good flowering if it wants to. It gets watered when the moss is absolutely bone dry, and then I just pour a bit over the top, or sometimes just spray it. I don't give it a lot, because as I understand it, this needs something of a real winter rest. So as I dry it back a bit, we'll see how we go. But I'm pleased with this. It is progressing, and so far so good. Dendrobium Jenkins Eye. So that's the end of this development phase, and we'll have to have a look at the initial photographs and the end photographs, and try and work out which is where we've gone. Okay, thank you for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. I look forward to seeing you soon. Bye.